After the NFL draft, who could the Miami Dolphins target on the veteran trade market? We're going to look at 5 trade targets for the Fins today at positions of need. So we're going to focus in on a defensive lineman, 3 corners, and 1 offensive player. I'm Nic Rohloff. This is Dolphins Today. But I do want to make this clear, and I want Dolphins fans to remember this. I think a trade could absolutely be on the horizon for the Fins. One, because maybe they strike out in free agency on a couple veterans and want to go the trade market route. But remember what the Dolphins have. They traded back in the 4th round with the Texans this past weekend, and they picked up a 2026 third. They also may get another pick from trading Jalen Ramsey. So if they trade Ramsey, they could have 2 extra picks to trade. They already have a pick in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round. A second one would provide you with multiple different picks to trade in the offseason. So that could be helpful to potentially getting Dolphins a veteran player via the market. So let's get into the first player that I could see the Dolphins targeting via trade. It's Greg Newsome, the cornerback from the Cleveland Browns. Now, there is rumors circulating that the Browns are looking to trade Greg Newsome, and it came out a couple days before the NFL draft that they could trade the former first-round pick out of Northwestern, and I think this is a solid fit and solid option for Miami. Before we get into Newsome more as a player and what it may cost, make sure you are following me over on Twitter. @Nic_Rohloff is my handle. Tweet about the Dolphins every single day. And if a trade actually did go down this offseason, whether it's Ramsey or the Dolphins acquiring a player, you'd learn about it quicker if you follow me because I'll tweet about it, and then I'll come over and make a video on the channel. So hit that follow button right now. All right, let's look at Newsome's career coverage stats. He has played 54 games. Like I said, he was the 26th overall pick in the draft 4 years ago out of Northwestern. And he's had a solid career. Like, completion percentage, solid. Got good size in the perimeter, 6'2", good speed. He's a little bit thin in terms of his build, but his athleticism makes up for it, which is what made him such a highly sought-after pick. Not a ball hawk type of corner, only 3 career interceptions in 4 seasons, so not someone crazy in that aspect, but he's a solid coverage guy. Not going to sit here and act like he's a star lockdown CB1, but he is absolutely a CB2 caliber type of guy. Now, the one concern that I have with Newsome is that he actually just had his worst season of his career. So the first 3 years, he was very solid. As a rookie, he had a QB rating when targeted of 96.6, only 2 touchdowns. Then he had his 2 best seasons in 22 and 23, where he had a QB rating of targeted under 90 and then under 80, only allowing 2 touchdowns then. But that number skyrocketed in 2024 to 4 touchdowns allowed and 120.7 QB rating. Maybe I'm looking too much into that because the Browns were the horrific and obviously the number 2 overall pick this year, but Newsome did have the worst season of his career this past year. And then there's another concern as well when factoring and maybe making a deal for Newsome. One, the draft compensation could be anywhere between a 3rd and a 5th round pick, but he also carries a $13.3 million cap hit this season because that's his base. Remember, he's playing on that 5th-year option. Cleveland did pick that up. And because they picked that up and he does not have an extension in place, if you traded for Greg Newsome, there's a world where you might only have him for 1 year. Because if he doesn't play good for you and you don't want to keep him around, he is an unrestricted free agent next season. So you'd have to trade for him. You'd have to extend him. But if you did not extend him, he might just walk and you traded a mid-round pick for a corner to get 1 year out of him. So there is a little bit of a dicey move if you traded for the former first-round pick. But would you make the move? Would you trade for Greg Newsome? Type T for trade, type P for pass. Let me know if you would take the swing on the former first-round pick out of Northwestern by trading with the Cleveland Browns after the draft. Get down in the comment section and let me know. Another trade target. This one's a defensive lineman. It's Andrew Billings, the longtime veteran D tackle. This is a fascinating possibility because the Bears didn't feel like they were going to be trading anyone. But then they drafted Shemar Turner on day 2 of the draft. And that kind of made people look a different way because they had Billings. They had Zach Pickens. They had Jervon Dexter. And now they had Shemar Turner. That seems like a lot of interior defensive linemen with them constantly having edge rushers as well. I could see Chris Grier adding of that. You obviously have Zach Sealer. You drafted 3 defensive linemen in Zeke Biggers and Jordan Phillips and Kenneth Grant. You still have Benito Jones there as well. But there likely needs to be another addition to make it a 6-man D lineman room. And I could see them looking to sign someone or maybe trade someone for cheap. Billings, over the past 2 seasons in Chicago, has been actually pretty solid. 23 tackles, 6 missed tackles for about a 13, 14 missed tackle percentage. Has gotten after the quarterback. 37 pressures, 32 hurries. Hasn't finished the job, but has been a pretty solid interior pass rusher in rotation and is one of the better Bears interior defensive run stoppers. I don't know if they would trade him. There is buzz. I was talking with our Bears host about if they could trade Billings or Javon Dexter, the former second-round pick out of Florida. It sounds like Billings would likely be the odd man out if they did trade someone because he does only have 1 year left on his deal. It is a cheap contract. You'd only have to pay him $2.1 million this season. But if you traded for Andrew Billings, all you would probably have to send is a late day 3 pick. And it might even just be one of those random trades where it's like Billings and a 7th for the Dolphins' 6th-round pick, where you swap 7th and 6th-round picks, but you get Andrew Billings. That is certainly an option. And I wouldn't hate if Miami ultimately added a veteran D lineman who could stop their run, but also generate some pressure to be in rotation with Grant, Sealert, and Jordan Phillips. Next trade target for the Fins, Jaylen Watson, the cornerback from the Kansas City Chiefs. This one might be the most intriguing because if you look just solely based off last season, Watson was better than Greg Newsome. Watson, former 7th-round pick by Kansas City. He only played about 500 snaps last season because he got injured, missed the whole second half of the season, but actually returned for the Super Bowl. So yes, he got hurt halfway through and missed half the season, but there is no injury concern for this year because he actually came back and was in that Super Bowl game where they obviously lost to the Philadelphia Eagles. But there is something interesting that could point towards Watson actually being traded. Jaylen Watson is entering the final year of his contract. The Chiefs GM, Brett Veach, since he has taken over, has not re-signed one homegrown defensive back. That is wild to me. Talking with our Chiefs report host, Tyler Jones, he thinks that Jaylen Watson's trade value could be a 3rd to 4th or 5th round pick, similar to Greg Newsome. Now, Jaylen Watson is entering the last year of his contract. He would only carry about a $3.4 million salary this season if you traded for Jaylen Watson. So you would trade a mid-round pick. You would have him cheap. Now, you would have to potentially extend him after trading for him or run the risk of losing him in free agency next offseason. But Watson, a 6'2", lengthy corner, who plays on the outside, has been really good for Kansas City over the last 3 seasons, likely not going to be re-signed, could be a very good option, and Tyler Jones told me that he expects Watson to be traded. He said he would bet he gets dealt before the season more than if he was on the team. So this is an option, and I would absolutely throw a 4th or a 5th round pick for Jaylen Watson because I like his size, I like his cover ability, and if the Chiefs aren't going to extend him, then why not try to get him for cheap since the Chiefs don't want to lose him for absolutely nothing? If the Dolphins do make a move in the trade market, whether it's trading Ramsey or acquiring a player, we will have you covered with a video. Hit that sub button. We're 77 subscribers away from 69,400. Let's get there on today's show. Join the channel today for daily Dolphins coverage. All right, moving on here to the next trade target for the Miami Dolphins. We're going to go to the one offensive player, a guy that we have actually talked about before. That is Michael Mayer, the tight end from Las Vegas. There was a lot of buzz about him getting dealt before the draft. Ultimately didn't come to fruition. Now, the Raiders didn't draft a tight end during the 7 rounds, but maybe Mayer could still be dealt. I doubt the Dolphins add an offensive player, if we're going to be honest, because I think they're set at every position offensively. After drafting Jonah Savaiinaya, you have your wide receivers, you have Tua, you drafted Ollie Gordon to complete that running back room. Like, there's no really need to get another tight end and another offensive player. But if there had to be one, I think a tight end 2 could be beneficial. I don't hate Pharaoh Brown. I don't hate Jalen Conyers, the UDFA, but you could argue it's a pretty weak room outside of Jonnu Smith, who set records for you last season. And Mayer, the former day 2 pick out of Notre Dame, could be an option. He missed a lot of time last year. Now, not because of injuries, actually because of personal reasons. He missed 11 games. Or missed 6 games, but played in 11. And after the Raiders drafted Brock Bowers, Mayer's role in the offense kind of got put a little to the woodshed. He is a solid blocking tight end. He's got good size to be a red zone threat. I think he'd work really well with Jonnu Smith. So if the Dolphins wanted to trade for an offensive player, I think tight end would be the position to do it at. Mayer, a player that I think the Dolphins would be interested in and would complement Jonnu Smith well, would cost you likely only a late day 3 pick as well. Only cost you $2.9 million in salary as well. So the only expensive contract that we've talked about to this point is Greg Newsome at $13.3 million. The other 3 in Billings, Watson, and Mayer would all cost you less than $5 million to acquire when it comes to a contract, which makes it more appealing as the Dolphins only have about $16.8 million in cap space to work with right now. All right, the final player we're going to talk about here is another corner. It's Amik Robertson from the Detroit Lions. There's been some deep chatter about Robertson potentially being traded this offseason following the draft. They got a lot of corners over there. They got Terry and Arnold. I'm spacing on the one other they signed. But Robertson has been linked to someone that they could deal. Now, Robertson is strictly a nickel corner. He's only 5'8", so he's really small. But there has been chatter about maybe moving Kader Kohou to the outside. Kohou has been this scheme and in this offense, or defense, for last season, but been in the organization for a while. An undersized corner for sure, which has made him a nickel for most of his career. But as you saw last season, late in the year when the Dolphins dealt with so many injuries, Cam Smith struggling, Storm Duck struggling, Kendall Fuller out, Kohou played a little bit outside. And maybe they want to kind of pull the trigger on moving him outside full time, and they trade for a nickel corner and Amik Robertson. Could also see the Dolphins signing veteran Mike Hilton and moving Kohou outside as well. Like, Kohou wasn't the best outside, but maybe they want to experiment with him doing it full time. Robertson was good in coverage last season for the Lions in nickel, only having a 57.5 completion percentage, 88.3 QB rating. Like, Robertson is certainly an intriguing option if you want to go that route of moving Kohou to the outside and then acquiring a nickel corner, whether it's via trade or free agency. But it's another name I want to throw out there for the Dolphins fans. Salary is not that much either, $4.7 million. Unclear of what the kind of price tag it would be to trade for Robertson. I likely would think it'd be 5th, 6th round pick in all likelihood. But Robertson is certainly an intriguing option for the Fins if they wanted to move Kader Kohou to the outside. All right, we talked about 5 Dolphins trade targets on this episode of Dolphins Today. Who do you want the Dolphins to trade for? We asked you if you would trade for Greg Newsome. Maybe it's Newsome. You can let me know down below. Maybe it's one of the other 4 names we talked about. Maybe it's a player that we did not even talk about on today's show. But name your Dolphins top trade target following the NFL draft. Mine is Jaylen Watson, the cornerback from Kansas City. And if you couldn't tell by the way I spoke about each player in this video, I clearly like Jaylen Watson a lot more. I think he's got good size. He can play outside. If you traded for him, it wouldn't cost you that much. Maybe that extra 3rd-round pick you got from Houston or a 4th or 5th-round selection. I don't think an extension would cost you that much either. You could probably get him for, I don't know, $8 to $12 million per season maybe. Maybe I'm valuing him a little bit lower than the market. But the truth is, you trade for Jaylen Watson, sign one of the other veteran corners like Rasul Douglas, Stephon Gilmore, Santa Samuel Jr., James Bradbury. It's not a terrible room. It's not. That's assuming you trade Jalen Ramsey, like it looks like it's heading that way. Like Watson on the outside, one of the veteran corners you signed for ANC, Kader Kohou in the nickel, Cam Smith, Storm Duck, Ethan Bonner's depth. Like, it's not the best room, but it's a significantly better room than what you currently have. So to me, Jaylen Watson is my top guy. All right, hit that sub button. Remember, if the Dolphins actually do pull off a trade, we will have you covered with the video and a full breakdown. So join the channel today.